WikiLeaks was the first proof of concept of Bitcoin as a totally uncensorable money. People talk about debanking these days, but this was a proper debanking, total debanking of WikiLeaks and Julian Assange. Project Spartacus was this idea of publishing the exact same material that Julian was being punished and persecuted for publishing to the Bitcoin blockchain. Bitcoiners are publishing these files and nobody can stop them. The proof of concept of the radical nature of Bitcoin as a publishing tool.
This episode of Supply Shock is brought to you by Ledn, a proud Bitcoin-only company and the global leader in Bitcoin-backed lending. Need cash but don't want to sell down your Bitcoin stack? Ledn has a trusted track record in providing liquidity. That's Ledn. You'll hear more about them later in this episode. As always, investments in blockchain technology involve risk. Terms and conditions may apply. Do your own research. The Blockworks Digital Asset Summit, crypto's premier institutional event, is coming back to London this October, the 13th to the 15th. You'll hear from top names across global finance, DeFi, and policy. Think BlackRock, Circle, Coinbase, and the UK Parliament. Notable speakers already locked in include Danny Masters from CoinShares, Jeff Park from Bitwise, and plenty more to come. There's also a VIP dinner on October the 13th. That's for speakers and VIP ticket holders only. It will sell out. It's all happening at the Old Billingsgate in London. Use code SUPPLY100 at checkout for £100 off. Quick reminder, nothing said on Supply Shock is a recommendation to buy or sell any investment or product. This podcast is for informational purposes only, and the views expressed by anyone on the show are solely their opinions, not financial advice or necessarily the views of Blockworks. Our hosts, guests, and the Blockworks team may hold positions in the company, sponsor, or projects discussed. Pete Rizzo, the Bitcoin historian, and X, here to welcome you to an exciting Supply Shock podcast. We're going to go deep into the Bitcoin history today, bring you to the present to one of the most exciting projects going on right now on the Bitcoin blockchain, talking about Project Spartacus, an effort to inscribe WikiLeaks' archive. You may remember WikiLeaks as the 2010, 2011, a little bit before that era, political website that really popularized, this cutting-edge use of the internet as a tool for advocacy around the globe. We're joined today by the founder of that group's brother, Gabriel Shipton, founder of information rights charity, a project connected or loosely connected to Project Spartacus apparatus. And we're going to dive in to everything that's going on to preserve the work that was being done by the freedom fighters back then in Bitcoin's early days with what's going on now. Gabe, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm really well, Pete. Good to be with you again.
I'm happy to have you here. So maybe we can jump right in for viewers who are unfamiliar with the Project Spartacus project. Came out in 2013, a really ambitious effort, really core to the ethos of the space, trying to preserve a record of material that is some of the most politically fraught that has been produced by the internet.
Well, there was a few stops and starts with Project Spartacus. It was we sort of started developing this project early 2022 when my brother Julian was still in Belmarsh prison. And it was the idea was, how do we engage Bitcoiners? How do we get to this audience and really ask them to stand with Julian, to do what Julian did and why he was suffering? Because I guess we've got to really go back into Julian's story to understand the origins of Project Spartacus. Julian at that time was in prison, in Belmarsh prison, which is the UK, Britain's Guantanamo Bay, just outside of London. He was being held there and was eventually released, but was held there for 5 years in relation to publishing material leaked by Chelsea Manning. And it was material that really exposed war crimes in Iraq, war crimes in Afghanistan, civilian deaths in the war in Afghanistan, exposed the media, exposed the corporate media of how they were lying about these wars, lying to the public to convince them that these wars were going better than they actually were. And these releases exposed all that, as well as so much other corruption around the world. And that's when the US government in Mike Pompeo, who was then in 2017 the head of the CIA, essentially launched a fatwa against Julian and WikiLeaks, which led to his imprisonment in Belmarsh for publishing that material. So Project Spartacus was this idea of publishing the exact same material that Julian was being punished and persecuted for publishing to the Bitcoin blockchain, so that Bitcoin users, could stand with Julian and take that same act and do that same act that he was being punished and imprisoned for. So thereby standing with him and showing that solidarity. But also, it was a way to archive these documents, these extremely important documents that exposed the first forever war, and archiving them onto the most secure publishing platform in the world, which is the Bitcoin network.
Maybe some helpful context for listeners. Of course, Julian Assange, one of the pioneers of Bitcoin, started accepting Bitcoin at WikiLeaks when it was cut off from the banking system in 2011. The price then still in the single digits, using Bitcoin to continue to fund that operation. But Julian also a great thinker when it came to helping shape how we thought about Bitcoin. And really an evangelist for something that's still a bit controversial in the community today, this idea that we can use the Bitcoin network as a way to store data, in your words, sort of a publishing tool. He really saw the potential for Bitcoin's network to store any form of data, including archives of material, data, hashes, and things like that. So maybe we can get into the Project Spartacus, how it leverages Bitcoin in this really unique way and does something that other publishing tools really can't. Because when you're talking about publishing something on Bitcoin, you're talking about something very specific, which is publishing something to a database that we have a high confidence will be around for hundreds of, not even longer, hundreds of years, if not even longer than that. So the idea that this will inscribe this archive and potentially other archives that are politically essential for long periods of time. So yeah, Gabe.
Yeah, that's right. So WikiLeaks has been coming under attack since it was founded in 2006. Whether that's like the extra legal banking blockades that you spoke about, but also their servers have been coming under attack. So you've seen the archives, the WikiLeaks archives, going offline, coming online, and they're not constantly there, not constantly available for people to access that information. And the same goes for the Internet Archive, which is a huge, long-running internet archiving project. We've seen their servers come and go offline, and not even all the WikiLeaks data is archived on the Internet Archive. And so where can we put our data that is reliable, is that is not going to be taken down, is not going to be fiddled with, gone on. And there's that famous photo of Stalin that keeps getting memed, where each person standing on the side of the boat keeps disappearing, right? And that's totally possible with on today's internet. We've seen Guardian stories on the Guardian, which is a UK newspaper. They've been changed over time, and so you see this sort of rewriting of history, right? not in the sense of a different take on history, but the actual going back and changing the history, the digital histories.
One of my favorite quotes from your brother was always this idea that he said, Bitcoin breaks Orwell's dictum, which is this idea that he who controls the past controls the future. And he was very worried about this, where you're talking about this creep of link rot and just the internet becoming an unreliable source of information, and did speak, very passionately and I think wisely about this attribute of Bitcoin as far back as 2014, 2015. And so, yeah, amazing to see it being brought to life today in terms of, still being used. And even back then, WikiLeaks was storing versions of files on Bitcoin, correct? They call it the hodler's dilemma. Ever wish you could get access to cash without selling down your stack? Well, Ledn makes that possible. Since 2018, Ledn has issued over $9 billion worth of Bitcoin backed loans, and they haven't lost a single Satoshi of client funds in the process. There are no credit checks. You can get funds in under 12 hours and repay whenever you want with zero penalties. Unlike others, Ledn doesn't lend out your collateral. They even publish biannual proof of reserves verified by top auditors in the blockchain. You can learn more at ledn.io. That's ledn.io. As always, investments in blockchain technology involve risk. Terms and conditions may apply. Do your own research.
Yeah, I don't know the history if they were storing versions of file. I knew they were using some encrypted hashes and things like that. But these documents with Project Spartacus, it's the entire document that's been inscribed onto Bitcoin. So, and that includes all the metadata. So it's this whole archive in its own fullness that is been there inscribed to be used forever. And it's actual individuals who are doing it. I think around 30% of the archive, around 23,000 of these war diaries have been inscribed already to the Bitcoin, to the blockchain. So it's really got some momentum, and we want to see this whole archive published and inscribed as really a proof of concept. I believe a proof of concept of the radical nature of Bitcoin as a publishing tool. Like I think we were talking a little bit before we came online. This sort of the coming of age of Bitcoin and how it's very much moving into the mainstream, and people often forget where it's come from and what it actually is capable of doing, being this uncensorable tool, not just for financial transactions, but also publishing. And WikiLeaks was the first, we touched on it briefly, but WikiLeaks was the first proof of concept of Bitcoin as a totally uncensorable money. And it was actually the United States government that launched this extra legal banking blockade against WikiLeaks under Senator John McCain. He was the lead proponent of it, and they had shut down WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks relied on donations. They shut down Visa, MasterCard, their PayPal, Julian's personal bank accounts were all closed down, like a proper debanking, right? People talk about debanking these days, but this was like this was a proper debanking, total debanking of WikiLeaks and Julian Assange. And Bitcoin, so WikiLeaks actually waited 6 months. There was lots of chatter, WikiLeaks should turn to Bitcoin, and Satoshi actually posted that, they shouldn't, Bitcoin is a beta technology, they shouldn't be moving to Bitcoin. And then Julian and WikiLeaks waited 6 months and then said they were adopting. And then there's that infamous last post of Satoshi that WikiLeaks has kicked the hornet's nest, and now they're coming towards us. And that really didn't happen. Bitcoin survived, and so did WikiLeaks. WikiLeaks was unable to be censored, and they used Bitcoin not just for donations but as their operating currency. So they were the first proof that not even the largest government in the world could shut down the Bitcoin network, and that was back in 2010, 2011. So I think it's very important to remember where we've come from there, and now with this next aspect, this aspect of publishing, it can't be stopped. We're publishing these files to the Bitcoin block. Well, users, Bitcoiners are publishing these files, and nobody can stop them. So I think it's a real demonstration of the continued power of Bitcoin as this uncensorable network.
Yeah, and an interesting, timely reminder. There's a bit of a disconnect here. I'm having a dissonance. I, just watched the White House, the President Trump's team kind of issue a Bitcoin and crypto report, and so you have this idea that Bitcoin is kind of becoming mainstream as a financial technology. Yet here, this project is providing a timely reminder of it can still be used for subversive things and things that are powerful and important, on the human rights side. So I was wondering if you could speak to that aspect of the project and just the people you've talked to who've been inspired by it.
I talked to a lot of journalists, a lot of leakers, people like that, and presenting them with somewhere leakers and journalists, they want their material to be read and they don't want it to be taken down, right? They want, particularly leakers, and that's why WikiLeaks was so successful, is because um, they became a magnet for leaks because they were reliable in that sense, and leakers could rely on that information to be distributed and kept online in an uncensorable way. And so I think what Bitcoin offers to people who are thinking of taking that risk, because leaking information is a huge risk to the leaker. Often, you see people like Chelsea Manning, who leaked these Afghanistan war files. She was imprisoned for 7 years. She was eventually, her sentence was eventually
treated very, very badly during that time.
yeah, treated very badly. She was on suicide watch. She was kept naked in her cell. All these types of, essentially what we would see as torturous treatment, and eventually released 7 years later by President Obama. He commuted her sentence. But these leakers, they make this principled decision to leak this information because they have a sense of revulsion of what they're seeing. Like Edward Snowden, he saw Brennan lie to Congress and about the spying on US citizens, and that motivated him to leak that information because of that dissonance. He saw the leaders of his organization, the NSA, lying about spying on US citizens, and he said, well, that's not true. I see it every day. And he decided to make that decision. And now look at him. He's exiled in Russia. So it's really important for leakers to know that their information is going to be available and be read by people. And I think Bitcoin offers that, or this way of publishing information to the Bitcoin blockchain offers that to leakers, a permanent place for the information that they take this incredible risk to bring to us, to the public. So in terms of that human rights aspect, I think it's incredibly important to have an uncensorable, distributed publishing network that can be never taken down, really connects with that leaking ethos, that information needs to get to the public and it needs to be there forever.
Yeah, it almost positions Bitcoin in some ways, and I'm curious your thoughts, as maybe a spiritual successor to WikiLeaks, and sort of a technology that can continue in a decentralized fashion what was done, by your brother and a single company and a team of collaborators.
Well, I guess this project sort of sits on its own, but I think if it's successful and if people can get together and mint this whole thing, then it exists as a proof, a proof of concept that this sort of thing is possible, and hopefully will be mimicked down the track. I think there is. I'm not really sure in the space whether there is this kind of thing, like a sort of Bitcoin Substack or something like that, some sort of project that gives journalists not just the uncensorable payment rails, but also the uncensorable publishing rails. I think that would be an interesting project for someone to do in the future, because even these Substack journalists, facing censorship, these independent journalists, they're all facing eventual censorship through these centralized systems, right? Like Substack is great and doesn't at the moment censor anyone, but it's still a proprietary centralized entity. It's not like Bitcoin. It's not a protocol-based publishing tool. So I think that's a really interesting space that hopefully we see some more action in over the coming years.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing that I saw when I looked at the actual application when it came out, that I thought was really powerful, is just this idea that with Julian and WikiLeaks, there had to be some kind of essentially a middleman type party that was kind of taking on the risk for publishing this data. And the interesting thing with Project Spartacus is you were able to simply come on, sign on to the program, select a file. Obviously, there's some developers who had to put together that program, but it invites kind of a larger group of people and a distributed group of people to come together. Whereas maybe when WikiLeaks was online, there was more centralization that was needed. So I was wondering if you could speak to the design of the actual program and how it operates and how it distributes that risk.
Unfortunately, I'm not the ordinals bot were the ones who really put together, I guess what works in the background, and they've done an incredible job at doing that. So I think you might have to have them on your show to explain exactly, how it all functions in the background. But from a user experience, like you said, you log on, you pay, you can either connect your wallet, or you can just pay the Bitcoin address, and the materials are minted or inscribed. So from a user experience, it's pretty seamless. But yeah, Ordinals Bot are the guys who've made everything happen in the background. So I would, maybe you could have Bruff.
Yeah, I'll have to have a more technical deep dive on that, but I certainly appreciate it as a user that this was able to happen. So it sounds like 30% of the archive is minted. Obviously, it's a tremendously large archive. Do you have a sense of what you're looking for in terms of contributions to get this to where you would like it to be, which is that you have 100% permanence on the WikiLeaks archive on Bitcoin? I would imagine.
Yeah, I think people can go on and you can either inscribe one, or you can inscribe 50 at a time. In terms of the total cost, I think it's a little bit over a Bitcoin that is needed to publish the whole archive. So if we're 30% of the way there, there's not that much to go, really. But there's also a donation aspect to this. Part of Ordinals Bot decided to donate their service fee to the foundation I founded, which is the Information Rights Project. And the Information Rights Project exists to essentially do what we did for Julian. We got Julian out of prison, after years and years of advocating for him in parliaments around the world, at a grassroots level. And we wanted to make an organization that could do the same thing for others who are facing persecution. And so that's why we founded the Information Rights Project. So there's this great link, not just for publishing on Bitcoin, but also protecting journalists and protecting whistleblowers actively by supporting a sort of groundbreaking foundation, a risk-taking foundation that is out there to protect people like Julian, technologists, as well as whistleblowers and journalists. So I think there is that nice link, like a circular link there, as well as part of this project. It's got, you can stand with Julian, you're archiving this information, and you're helping protect whistleblowers and other journalists by participating in this. So I urge everybody to jump on projectspartacus.xyz and inscribe a few of these Afghanistan war logs. There's one, the longest log is particularly moving. It's about a man called Bo Bergdahl, who was serving in Afghanistan, and he saw what I was talking about before, this dissonance, from what he was seeing on the ground to what he was reading in the media about the war. And one night he decided that he couldn't take it anymore, and he went AWOL and left his base, and essentially making that decision that he didn't want to participate in this war anymore. And this particular war diary, that is the largest one of this entire collection, describes the search for him over the coming days. And they eventually found him, and he was eventually taken back to the United States. And it's revealed that he's had that before he decided to go off the base, he had a phone call with his dad where he was talking about this, the orders he was receiving and how he didn't agree with them. And his dad just told him to do what he felt in his heart. So I think that's one of the really human stories that exist as part of this release, because I think it's important to remember that these are human beings that have been spoken about in this archive. These are real civilian deaths, real deaths of US soldiers, real deaths of enemy combatants that are documented within these 78,000 war diaries. So there is a very human, very real element about this effort.
Yeah, it's interesting right now. I'm also reminded that there's, different legal cases even ongoing right now related to Bitcoin and cryptocurrency that speak to, writing code and publishing and just the risks that entails. I'm speaking about the Tornado Cash trial, which is ongoing in New York right now, as well as the trial of the Samurai developers who have pled guilty related to charges I think that were just unsealed this week about their activities. So there is still this chill around publishing. There is still this idea that writing code isn't something that isn't protected as it should be. I guess maybe I was hoping you could speak to that need to just generally kind of get to a place in America, the other first world countries where writing code is protected, where publishing is more protected than it has been. Of course, I know you're pushing for a pardon for Julian for his we're still having not being treated as a journalist, right, as someone who was publishing in the public interest. So I was wondering if you could speak to that. Let's take a quick break to talk about today's sponsor, Ledn, the most trusted name in Bitcoin-backed lending. Look, if you're like me, you never really want to think about selling your Bitcoin. Ledn has a solution. You can borrow against your Bitcoin. No credit checks, no monthly payments, no hidden fees. You can get your cash in under 12 hours and pay back when you want with zero penalties. Unlike other platforms, Ledn has a history of transparency. They prove it with independent proof of reserves audits every 6 months on the blockchain. In total, they've issued more than $9 billion in loans without losing a single satoshi of client funds. That's the kind of track record you want when it comes to securing your Bitcoin. You can learn more. Visit ledn.io. That's ledn.io. As always, investments in blockchain technology involve risk. Terms and conditions may apply. Do your own research.
Yeah, I think really great point, Pete, to bring up Tornado Cash and the Samurai guys. That's I think what we struggled with in fighting for Julian's freedom was this, I guess, a lack of understanding in the broader community about how technologists are being persecuted. Like, people are used to seeing journalists being persecuted or whistleblowers, but it's to convince these organizations like that traditionally advocate for these people, like Amnesty International or Human Rights Watch, it's a bit of a heavier lift for them to go and convince them, well, actually these people are suffering persecution too for code that they created. And that's part of the reason why we founded this organization, so that we can help people like that as well, because they're left behind by these other human rights organizations. And there's a lot of education that is needed to explain in, I guess, a layman's way to activists out there who are usually behind these freedom of speech causes, but they're not so connected to what Tornado Cash was able to do, or what Samurai Wallet does for protecting people's human rights in their anonymity and their privacy. And so I think there's a real gap there for us to fill with the Information Rights Project to help these guys and explain to people that this is actually about fundamental rights. It's not just it's not just some developer is getting attacked. It's actually about your fundamental rights to privacy, but also to publishing and publishing code. So I think that's a great point to bring up, and something that we had to do a lot of work with in Julian's case, reframing his persecution so that it could be understood by the general public. I think is very important in these cases as well. The pardon for Julian, it's still a work in progress. Julian had to plead guilty to what is essentially publishing, communicating with a source, possessing classified information, all the things that investigative journalists do on a daily basis. And so what that led to now is this prosecutorial pathway for the DOJ to go after any publisher, any journalist, anyone who's using technology to publish with this the US Espionage Act. They can essentially reach in. What they can do is they can reach into any country around the world and grab whoever they want, whoever's published information that they don't like. They can use the Espionage Act to grab them and and prosecute them, keep them in prison without a conviction like they did to Julian. So it's a very, very dangerous precedent, and we are advocating for a pardon for Julian so we can unwind that precedent and show to the people who did this to Julian, show the Mike Pompeos of the world that if you do this, it's just going to be a waste of your time, because the public will rise up. There will be public pressure against you, and that public pressure will eventually win over these tyrants.
Yeah, it seems the big fight in Bitcoin and crypto right now, connecting into those cases, is this idea to tie freedom to financial privacy to freedom of speech. Just this, even as much as we've advanced in the government, in the regulation, it still seems like there's a fight every time that there's a kind of new piece of legislation that comes out to put in place rules for self-custody, financial privacy, and that fight is ongoing. I wonder what kind of tips or just advice you would have for people who are in the thick of that fight right now, because it seems like they're working on a very similar problem, which is, how do you, surface this really important, value when the government sort of shrouds it with, all of this sort of language that is meant, to keep you kind of scared and away from really what is a fundamental freedom.
I guess what we learned in Julian's fight was it's not a single thing that is going to fix everything, and really it's about getting to normal people and convincing those people. And I think Bitcoiners have been great at this over the years. Communicating their story to people, onboarding them, bringing them into Bitcoin, and I think that's essentially what is the most needed factor. It's the movies, it's the artists all coming on board to help convince the public, the journalists, all these ways of communicating with the public about this. And we always saw it in Julian's fight not as a top-down effort. What we saw it as a bottom-up effort, and that was convincing normal people first, coalescing those normal people, and then taking that into government, because the Congress people and the senators, they need votes, right? And those votes come from normal people. So if their constituents are saying, hang on, this is wrong, code is speech, and why are these people being prosecuted? We want you to do something about it. Then those Congress people, I found most Congress people, most senators are very, very afraid. They're not really courageous people. But if they have a number of their constituents or their constituency behind them saying that they want something, that gives them the power to actually do something. And that's what we found time and time again in Julian's case. It was from the bottom that we made the change. It wasn't a top-down thing. And so, I encourage everyone in the Bitcoin communities to form those groups, coalesce those groups, and use that bottom-up power to take those changes into lawmakers and even into media organizations, because they need readers as well. And if their readers are writing letters to the editors and things like that about this, it can convince these media corporations to actually change that narrative as well. So, I think that was the main lesson that we learned, that it was a bottom-up effort, not a top-down effort.
Yeah, one of my favorite contributions to the Bitcoin magazine, the print magazine, was, of course, inscribing Julian Assange's cover on the blockchain, which will be forever there as a memorial for his effort. So, winding down here, I want to talk about information rights, to the information rights charity. Are you going to be continuing to, or how would you hope to work with the Bitcoin community going forward? Obviously, you've spent a lot of time with these groups over the last years as you've been fighting for Julian's freedom. I'm just curious how you plan to continue this connection.
Well, I think a big part of it is that education, education part. A lot of people, I think Human Rights Foundation is doing a wonderful job at that, and we'd hopefully collaborate with them on those education pieces. But from our our purpose is to help people who are being persecuted, help individuals who have been persecuted for exercising their natural rights, their right to freedom of expression. And so that is our main focus, and how we can, I guess, give people the tools to protect that right, the financial tools in the form of Bitcoin, but also the publishing tools that they need to express themselves freely without censorship. And so using Bitcoin and Bitcoin education as part of that, and also engaging with the Bitcoin community on particular efforts, like say this one, for the Afghanistan war logs, for Project Spartacus. So I think we're sort of, I guess, straddling a bit of a few things, like developing these new activities and these new ways to engage the community, but also doing education and also doing fundraising from the Bitcoin community, which was extremely generous when we were fighting for Julian's freedom. They funded a lot of the activities, a lot of the legal fees that we needed when we were fighting for Julian's freedom, and we hope that continues, that they continue fighting for freedom of speech and freedom of expression at that level as well. So there's a few different tiers, and we hope to protect people like the Tornado Cash guys and the Samurai Wallet guys. We hope to use those political networks, those activist networks that we built up over the 5 years fighting for Julian's freedom, to now turn to these other efforts and convince them that those are just as important as the fight that they participated in to free Julian, which we were successful in, by the way. So we've got that track record of getting people out of prison. And that's essentially what we want to do. We want to get people out of jail. We want to free people.
Yeah, well, I'd be remiss not to ask. There's a lot of fans in the Bitcoin community of your brother. Just was hoping you might be able to give us a little glimpse into how he's enjoying his freedom these days.
Yeah, I mean, he's getting. I haven't seen him with so many. He's getting all these freckles. He's been out in the sun, getting a lot of sun these days, out in the in the Australian, what we call the bush, which is like the Australian wilderness. So he's been enjoying that, getting out into the bush, going fishing, doing all these sorts of things that he wasn't able to do for 14 or 15 years while he was while he was stuck in this limbo, essentially on the run, for 7 years in the Ecuadorian embassy, and then 5 years in the maximum security prison. So yeah, he's just enjoying his life. He's engaging with technology again, catching up with all of that. So I think we're going to see more and more from Julian over the coming months and years. He's very much engaged on the political issues as well, and I guess if you follow WikiLeaks on Twitter, you can see that they're very much focused on, I guess, the biggest themes of injustice around the world at the moment. So I suggest everyone follow WikiLeaks on Twitter if they want to keep up to date with what Julian's up to. But yeah, he's enjoying himself, enjoying his freedom. He was very happy to see Ross Ulbricht pardoned as well. Ross actually wrote him a letter while he was in prison, which Julian got. So
Wow.
So
between the prisons.
That's right. He was very happy to see Ross finally free, and has been following him as he's been re-engaging with the world. So it's and obviously it's great for us. We put our lives on, like Julian's family we put our lives on hold for 5 years to fight for Julian's freedom. So it's great to have him out and be able to ring him up on the phone or go and visit him and things like that too.
Well, of course, Julian, a great contributor to the public dialogue. So if and when he were to make that reappearance, I know there are a lot of people who would be looking forward to that and welcoming that. Gabe, Project Spartacus, where can people go to find more?
ProjectSpartacus.xyz is where they can just pop on, and it's like I said, it's really simple. Pop on, inscribe some more logs, let's get to the 74,000. Let's mint the whole collection. I think it'll be huge effort and a great yeah, a great message to everyone that Bitcoin still has that dissident or revolutionary spirit, even though we're seeing it talked about in the White House, which is it's actually a bit weird, right? To be honest, like to see a president like talking about Bitcoin all the time when we sort of know that the underlying the underlying technology and the underlying reason that it was created is to sort of take down the it's because the US dollar was so fraught and central banks were so fraught, right? Like it's yeah, it's a little bit weird. So I think Project Spartacus is another reason to to show that Bitcoin is still got that cypherpunk spirit.
Well, I think a nice way to think about it is America is embracing Bitcoin because America needs Bitcoin, not because Bitcoin needs
Yeah,
America.
yeah,
We'll
exactly.
certainly understand that. And Gabe, really appreciate you giving us this update. Pass on my best wishes to the whole family. Always I've loved running into you since the freedom and before then, helping with obviously the important work. But really great to hear that you'll be keeping it up. Of course, followers of this podcast will be keeping up our engagements as well. Digital Asset Summit out in November. Going to be bringing a Bitcoin perspective to that event out there. Blockworks.co/events. If you want to go find out more, definitely check out Project Spartacus. Definitely check out Julian's work. Follow WikiLeaks on X, and I guess know that those tweets are being informed now by one of the key founding minds. So we'll look to see you out there. We appreciate you tuning in. This has been a Supply Shock of Blockworks podcast.